All right, calling to order the Monday, December 9th meeting of the Chaska Parks Board. Mary, roll call.
All right, Chair David Roan,
Here?
David Downs,
Here.
Ernesto Ruiz Gutierrez, Joshua Ives,
Here.
Lauren Mahalov, Patricia Wittrock,
Here.
Shawn Olsen,
Here.
Jason Branch,
Here.
Vincent Kim, Matt Uderman,
Here.
Elizabeth Wybing.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Moving on to item number 3, to adopt the agenda. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? If none, I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
All right, Commissioner Uderman, second.
Second.
I'll give it to Commissioner Wittrock. And any corrections, comments on additional thoughts on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And visitor presentation, and you are part of a different component of our meeting, Tim, so I think that seeing nobody else out here in the audience, we will go ahead and close out the visitor presentation at what I'm guessing is just a few minutes past 7. And so moving on from there to item number 5, and that is to approve Park Board previous meeting minutes, and these will be the ones from October of 2019. Was there anything amongst those meeting minutes that you saw that you would like to comment or correct? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
All right, Commissioner Olsen, second.
Second.
All right, Commissioner Branch, any further comments on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And moving down from that, we have the opportunity now to receive the council and planning meeting minutes from the council on October 7th, October 21st, November 4th, November 19th, and then the Planning Commission of September 11th and October 9th. Were there any items that you found amongst those meetings worthy of comment or discussion? All right, no motion required on those, and so we will go ahead and receive those minutes. And so that moves us on to item number 7 for new business, starting with 7A, which would be the recognition of, well, I'll just go ahead and let our director, Marshall, go ahead and take the mic from there.
Good evening, Park Board Chair and Commissioners. Good to be with you tonight. So yes, first up on the agenda, I would like to formally recognize our Parks and Recreation Maintenance Manager, Ron Pieper. He is going to be retiring with the city of Chaska here. His last official day is going to be January 20th. He had full intention of being here tonight, although he lives out in the country, and I think he had some snow removal duties in order for his wife to get into the household. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it here tonight, but I was swift enough to make sure we got a picture of him.
In pose and everything.
Yeah. And this was a picture that we took that actually appears in the new activity guide that's also recognizing Ron. But so Ron has served with the city of Chaska for 30 years, so quite remarkable. He's literally been with the city since the community center was built. He's been through all the different remodels and changes there. So the community center is one building under his responsibility, along with the curling and event center. He oversees 3 full-time custodial staff, and then indirectly supervises numerous part-time staff as well, and has just done a fabulous job at these facilities. And I can honestly say he's one of these individuals that can pretty much figure out how to fix anything, just one of those rare skills, just a good tinkerer, And, you know, a lot of the events you go to, the community events that we host, even the games and things that kids are playing, a lot of those he's built. So he's just taken a big passion to help out wherever he can within the Parks and Recreation Department. And, you know, over 30 years, I've told him that, you know, he should feel really proud about, you know, being a part of the fabric of the community and helping build the community that exists within our facilities and all the daily patrons that come on through. So it's going to be sad to see him go, but I'm excited for him to take that next journey on into retirement. We will be celebrating over the next couple of weeks. Actually, next week, Wednesday, we're having an internal luncheon with him, and then the following Friday, December 20th at 2 o'clock, you all are invited as well as kind of our city recognition. That's going to be held at the lodge, and I can email this out as a reminder too, but from 2 to 3 o'clock that afternoon, there will be some cake and lemonade and just a gathering to recognize Ron. And then a lot of us will be going out to happy hour later on that Friday to celebrate with him as well. So with his retirement, that is bringing about some change for us. Just so happens that it coincides with a new direction the city is going to be taking with an overall kind of citywide facility maintenance division. This was identified through a gap analysis study that was conducted through a third party about a year ago. That study identified some current gaps in our, in our employment to make sure that we're taking care of all of the facilities across the entire city. So with that, we're looking at a new model in which there will be kind of a new facility maintenance division that's going to be housed out of Public Works. So we'll be looking to bring on some new staff within that division going into the next year. Under that new division, the community center and the curling and event center will be part of that, but we still need some day-to-day oversight of the community center, just given how big it is, the amount of traffic that goes through there, the fact that it is an aging facility, just has daily demands. So we'll also be replacing internally within our department a facility supervisor position. And in addition, we're looking at hiring an ice arena and operations coordinator. And that position is going to work more evenings and weekends to support a lot of the activities going on that side of the building. And then in conjunction with that, a big shift is we're asking our current daytime custodial and maintenance staff to shift to work to overnights, which we think is going to lend itself to higher level of maintenance and cleaning duties overnight when people aren't in the building. So a lot of changes we're working through. The facility supervisor position and the ice arena and operations coordinators positions are currently posted. You can go out to the city's webpage and view those under the employment tab. So I encourage you to do that. Any questions?
Is that something that you have internal candidates for those two positions, you think?
I anticipate there will be internal candidates for sure.
Yep.
I'd like to echo, some of your comments on Ron's contribution. You think 30 years and what Chaska was like back in 1989 and everything that, the exponential growth of this community in that time and how the demands on his time and his talents would have had to have grown exponentially over that 30 years as well. And I think most, as you had said, he could pretty much do anything, and the things that he had to learn to do, as by necessity as a part of a city that was growing so quickly, and how he has proven to be so capable of all those things. It's he's going to be sorely missed.
Yeah. I'll share a funny story how he was telling me that he recalls the day when he came back. and shared with his staff that he had been updated by management that there's going to be this idea of email coming pretty soon. Yeah, so it just, you just forget, you know, that really wasn't that long ago, you know, but what would we do without that? It's unreal. And now we're even moving away from emails, you
Yeah.
know, who knows what, so. But if you have the opportunity on the 20th, would definitely encourage you to stop by the lodge and wish Ron.
And what time is that going to be?
2 o'clock
2
that
o'clock.
afternoon.
Okay.
All right,
All right.
next up, I want to formally recognize Commissioners Shawn Olsen and Pat Wittrock. This is your last meeting of serving the city of Chaska. You've served a full term of 9 years, which I did the math, just an average of 1 hour meeting, which I think we all know typically our meetings go over 1 hour. But even at the minimum, that's 108 hours of service over those 9 years that you've provided to the city of Chaska. So on behalf of that, I just really want to express my thanks for your service and dedication to the city of Chaska. It's my understanding you've been a part of a lot of fun projects over the years with some of the park developments and the Curling and Event Center and Fireman's Park, and it was an honor to serve with you to implement the off-leash dog area over at Lions Park, and let's not forget the Chaska park naming policy that you were a part of as well. So thank you for that. City Council will be recognizing you as well. Not exactly sure if that'll be their first or third meeting in January, but I'll be sure to make you aware of that and would encourage you to attend that city council meeting to be formally there too. So thank you.
Thank you.
And after the meeting tonight, we do have the opportunity to celebrate and socialize over at Size. We've noted that in our agenda, and public's welcome to attend as well. So look forward to that. And then looking ahead to 2020, just with commissioner appointments, we've also got 2 of our commissioners that are due up to reapply, essentially, for another term if they wish. That would be Lauren McCaleb, so she's reached the end of her first 3-year term. And then per our commissioner handbook, our youth representation is a 1-year term. So Vince would need to reapply for that as well. So they've been, if they haven't already, they will get that information from our city clerk to reapply. The current communication's been put out to the public for people to apply for commissioner positions as well. And then in our January meeting, we will need to formally vote on our chair and vice chair to be able to give that recommendation to city council for them to make that appointment. That's an annual thing that we do. So assuming Dave and Jason want to continue in their roles, but it's also an opportunity if others want to express that interest and try to fight for their chair, we'll go down, we can do that, so. So we'll take care of that business at our meeting in January, okay, to be able to make that recommendation to council. Any questions on any of that? Okay. So next up on our agenda for new business is Park RX, i.e. like prescription. And this is another exciting project that I've been invited to participate on, to represent Chaska and work with some other local partners. In fact, Pat Stieg behind me, who's going to be giving the presentation on the trail wayfinding, is a significant stakeholder in this project as well, and can maybe answer some questions after if you've got more questions. But ParkRx is really positioning our outdoor recreation, parks, trails, as a means to, I guess, enhance people's health and well-being, all the way to the point of, you know, recognizing that it could be a formal prescription by a doctor to help treat a lot of, you know, diseases and whatnot. And so there's a Minnesota Health and Nature Initiative that was put out through the Department of Natural Resources, essentially that they're wanting to advance a statewide discussion around the health benefits of nature and outdoor recreation. And so there's this concept of ParkRx, there's another program out there called NatureRx. And so we're essentially coming together, and there's representation from Carver County, Parks and Health and Human Services. There's Scott County Parks and Health and Human Services. There's representation from Three Rivers Park District. There's representation from the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, representing the state agency. And then also some representation from some of the local healthcare systems. And then representation also from the University of Minnesota Extension through the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. So really a nice wide variety of expertise at the table, really trying to come together and figure out, you know, how can we develop a program here in this region in which healthcare professionals would have the means to prescribe nature for their patients, so to speak. So some of the goals I'll just share with you through ParkRx are to empower doctors and other health professionals to prescribe time and nature to patients during the routine delivery of health care, to reduce the effects of chronic disease and mental health issues with a no-cost intervention that is supported by scientific research, to create the next generation of environmental stewards by prescribing time in local parks, to evaluate the effects of park prescriptions on park utilization, overall experience, and measurable health outcomes. And lastly, to fund and publish research in peer-reviewed journals and publications on health and wellness, public lands, outdoors, nature, and recreation. So it's really cool because, I mean, this is stuff that, you know, a lot of us in the industry have known for a long time. It's kind of like, yeah, we all know being outside, breathing fresh air, getting out in the wilderness generally is good for our health. But now more and more research is coming out, and it's more evidence-based to the point where now physicians are actually starting to pick up on this as another means to be able to help their patients with whatever they may be dealing with. So we just had an initial meeting the other week. Lots of good ideas going around. We're going to plan to meet again in January with the hopes of planning a roundtable event sometime in the spring to bring more stakeholders to the table and try to better understand what type of program we could implement to help advance this initiative here in the Carver County area. So, did I elaborate on that all right, Pat? I think you did. Okay, thanks.
So Marshall, I'm curious, if you were to go to the doctor, would the doctor literally write you a prescription that says go outside 3 times a week?
Yeah, so there's, so one of the options is through this specific ParkRx nonprofit organization. And they've basically have created an online platform in which agencies would input all of their parks and then the different amenities within the parks, and I think there's even opportunity to put in like the different, you know, levels of programming you might have available within the parks. But it's my understanding what they can do is then prescribe, you know, so many park visits and as part of their plan, And if they have a cell phone, through GPS, it would pick up on whether or not they visited those parks. So then there's sort of that level of accountability when they go back for another visit. They can, see whether or not they've been to the parks. That's just one kind of methodology, though. I think there's a lot of just different discussion around, equity and access, and what about even just spending time in your own backyard, might be a health benefit, so.
Would this be also involve program development as well as park physical development of the area? Or is, something where, I don't know, there'd be programs where there'd be hikes through the woods that, so many times a week that people could go, or whatever,
Yep.
those types of things?
I think that'll be taking it to the next level. So it's one thing to, point people to where our parks are and trying to describe the benefits of just spending time there, but I think people definitely probably would gain more benefit with some sort of programming and meeting other people. So that could certainly be an outcome.
Sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Would it also include some sort of a promotional or an educational campaign, just to kind of let the general public know that get out into these parks, it's good for you? It's
Yeah.
kind of a wellness component.
Yeah, I would
to it
imagine
all.
that would be a huge component of it. I mean, just the education and some of the, evidence-based facts that are now starting to come out within these research studies.
Yeah, it'll be nice to be able to look at all the parks in the adjacent areas too, to, open up our parks to the people around us and vice versa.
Yeah, and and whether it's, the DNR land down by the river, the Fish and Wildlife area, to the local regional parks, but then, just day to day, our network of neighborhood parks. And just, so it's really cool that, we can really advocate for these resources that we have to really be a part of essentially the healthcare system.
I think it would really be nice to be able to broadcast all the trails and the work you're doing to interlink trails from community to community and things like that. That would be a good part of that, I would think, too.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into the next agenda item.
Just,
You teed that one up perfectly.
Item number
I'll
8.
tee him up and
old
you hit him
business.
off, boy.
So our next agenda item is follow-up on the trail wayfinding pilot project we had done over the summer and fall. And that was done in collaboration with Pat Stieg in Carver County, along with the city of Victoria. And as I had mentioned in a previous update, a part of that was actually conducting a research study, or some sort of evaluation mechanism, which we partnered with WSB to do that. And so Pat's joining us today to review the findings of that work. So I'll go ahead and get him set up. So with that, I'll bring up Pat Stieg, who is with Carver County Health and Human Services.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Park Board. It's a delight to be here with you this evening and share this information that we had the opportunity to work with the City of Chaska, and as Marshall said, also our Carver County Parks Department and the City of Victoria. Some of you I've had a chance to meet previously with projects I've had a chance to be a part of here in Chaska, and some of you meeting for the first time, but I'm looking forward to doing more work with all of you. As Marshall mentioned, we're collaborating on the Park RX program along with some other partners in the county, and I saw you had another item on your agenda later that we partnered on as well, so I may have to stick around just to hear about that, so I'm up to date for our next meeting. So this project is a project that was done, and we selected WSB as our vendor to do the essentially public engagement of the project. So that's who we selected through a an RFP process to do that, and the presentation I'll share with you tonight is kind of a brief summary of what we did and what we learned. So as part of the active living component of our Carver County Public Health Project with our statewide health improvement work, the SHIP program, we work with communities like yours to make our communities more walkable and bikeable, because we know if we do that, people will be able to have more opportunities to be physically active, and if they're more physically active, they're healthier. So that's where this project kind of stemmed out of. We had interest expressed by the city of Chaska and the city of Victoria and Carver County Parks to do something around wayfinding signage on their trail systems. And it was delightful to be able to do that with them, since they all have their own trail systems, yet they all intersect, and the public doesn't care whose trail it is. They just want a good trail experience. Unless, of course, they encounter a problem, then they want to know who to call. But other than that, they just want a good trail experience. And so we know that our trail systems intersect, and we want to make it a smooth system for them to navigate and enjoy and have good experiences. And as we were doing this project, I was thinking about work that had been done out of Portland State University some years ago, where they identified the different types of bicyclists. And as you can see on the screen there, they did the work and they categorized them as first the strong and the fearless, which only makes up about 7% of bicyclists. And these are people who are willing to bicycle really without any bicycle infrastructure or very limited infrastructure. Basically nothing stops them from biking, because that's what they do and they're very passionate about it. And these are also probably the type of bicyclists that really don't need signs. They're just going to go, and that's fine. The second group was the enthused and confident, which made up about 5%. And these people are willing to bicycle if there is some specific bicycle infrastructure in place, but they're not willing to ride under any conditions, like the first group is. Thirdly, then, is the interested but concerned. And as you can see, this makes up the biggest portion of bicycle riders or potential bicycle riders at 51%. And these people are willing to bicycle if there is some high-quality bicycle infrastructure in place. These people need to see that certain things are in place in order for them to feel confident and safe and comfortable with biking, but they're very interested in doing so. And then lastly, the fourth group, which again is more than a third, is no way, no how. It doesn't matter what you do. They're not going to go out and bike, either because they don't feel confident or they don't feel safe, or frankly, they just don't have an interest in biking. So of course, you're not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to convince them to come and bike with you. But as I was looking at this data, I thought, you know, the same thing kind of applies probably to walkers and pedestrians as well. Maybe the percentages would be different, but they probably fall into different categories, the same categories, just maybe in different percentages. And so as we look at trying to make our trail systems one that works for everyone, it's probably good to keep in mind that there are different types of trail users. So just a little overview and the purpose for our project. We know that there are a lot of people who do not take advantage of our trails because they find them difficult to navigate. And this, of course, can create anxiety for some of them. They don't want to get lost. They need to be at certain places at certain times. They want to make sure they feel safe and comfortable and confident. And so if they are feeling that anxiety, they're either not going to explore new trails that they're not familiar with, or they may not walk or bike our trails at all, which is very unfortunate after all the time, energy, and money that groups like yours put into building and maintaining those to make them available for public use. But the lack of signs, of course, are not unique to our trails here in Carver County. If you've biked or walked trails elsewhere, you've probably found that many of them are not signed. And some of them that are signed, really, the signs aren't that good, and others that are signed, they seem pretty good. And so as we were preparing for this project, we actually asked around to some of our neighbors here in the metro area and outside of the metro area and in other states about their trail signage systems and how they came up with them. And we got some really good information from all over the country about systems that they put in place and how they went about doing that. And then when I asked them, have you ever asked your trail users what they think of your signs? every one of them said, no. We've never asked the trail users what they think of our signs. And so we did a little more digging, and we found one published study that had been done of a place that actually did ask their trail users, and it was a suburban community in the state of Hawaii. So we said, well, this is interesting. I wonder if what they learned might also apply here in Minnesota if we were to ask our trail users. Because again, we don't want to put out a trail sign system that really isn't useful to the trail users. It's an incredible waste of money, obviously. So that really was what we tried to do, is to learn from trail users and non-users, which we prefer to call potential trail users, what they like in a signage system, what's useful and helpful to them. So we worked with WSB to come up with the information we were going to ask these individuals after we came up with the signs themselves. And we wanted to make sure that we heard from a variety of people. Again, not both trail users and non-users, but also different ages, different incomes, different types of trail users, from walkers to bikers to runners to people who might use the trails for commuting purposes, to those that are just using it for recreational purposes. We also did some special outreach to segments of the community that we thought potentially might have some significantly different views than the general population, so we wanted to make sure we talked to them as well. So WSB did a variety of things for us to make sure that happened, including speaking to, through some focus groups with some of the senior adults here in Chaska. At the lodge, we had an opportunity to visit with seniors up there. We also talked with residents from the Latino community at the Riverview Terrace Community Center, and then also did a special outreach to women and women who were mothers to see if they had any specific concerns or interests in that. So the slide that you see now, we also started to think about the components of a successful trail system. Since we had the two municipal trail systems along with the county regional trail system, we put special attention on that one on the center bottom there about understanding that cross-jurisdictional portion. Because as I said earlier, we know that the public doesn't really care who owns the trail. They just want a good experience, and they oftentimes can't tell if they've moved from one trail system to another because they all look the same, of course. So this was kind of the prototype or the template that we came up with for a trail sign. Since we didn't have signs out there and we wanted to test this, we needed to have some signs designed and installed. So the one on the left is what we call a destination sign. And so the city of Chaska, with a heavy workload on Marshall, as well as the city of Victoria and Carver County, determined what should go on each of the signs. Because of course every individual sign needs to be different, because the destinations you put on this sign are going to be different than the destinations you put on the sign a mile up the road, and it depends if you're approaching that sign from the north or the south or the east or the west. You're looking at different destinations and different distances. So we learned a lot just about sign design and production, not having a lot of that in our county currently, and it is quite an art to figure out how best to do that. But you can see the different components of the sign here that went into it. On the upper part, we included the name of the trail. On the bottom part, we included the bicycle and pedestrian emblems to indicate that it was a shared use trail, and then also the logos of the different agencies that were involved. You know, we could have just went with a Chaska logo for the Chaska city-owned trails, but it probably would have took us even longer to get the project done and produce all the signs. We decided we would put all the partners on every sign that went out, no matter which trail it was. And then on the right-hand side is an example of our directional arrow signs. So we also had some of these signs out there to just help people to be reassured that you're still on the right path, you're still on the same trail, you haven't lost your way, just keep going this direction. And for the city trails, they're not named. The county regional trails are named, as you see on the left there, but the cities were not. So we decided to test a few more things. And so we decided to test naming those municipal trails and trail connections that we were going to do. The one being the Green Line, which essentially runs from downtown Chaska here up to downtown Victoria. And then more of a suggested recreational loop trail, which we called the Orange Loop line that you'll see in just a minute on the map. So we decided we would name them, and there would be another part of the evaluation that we would do. So here you can see the Orange Loop. There's a close-up of it on the lower left, and then in on the right-hand photo, you can see the loop as well. So again, this was a loop that was developed because it's not one continuous trail, obviously, but it's a suggested recreational loop that someone might want to try if they're looking for that type of experience. A little hard to see the green line because of all the other green in the photo there, but it essentially went from downtown here along Bavaria Road up to downtown Victoria, so I'm sure you're familiar with that. The second big task, as I said then, was to determine what was going to be on each sign and where they were going to be installed. So a lot of work went into that by the park departments and the public work departments to make that all happen. And then it was starting to decide, well, what do we want to ask the trail users when they get out and start experiencing these signs on the trails. The engagement that I mentioned, we included not only those 3 focus groups that I mentioned specifically, but we also did a couple of pop-up events, one of them being at the Chaska Farmers Market, where we had a display there along with the other vendors, and as people came by, we stopped and talked to them and got their excuse me, impression, as we had copies of the signs with us at that point. And then the second pop-up event was the Chaska bicycle event that you did this fall that I'm sure you recall. Unfortunately, was not as well as attended as we hoped, mostly because of the cool, wet weather that day. But we did have a chance to interact with some people there and get their impressions of the signs that were out on the trails they used as well. And then the last thing we did that also, well, I'm sorry, the other thing we did that engaged both trail users and non-users was an online survey. And so each of the agencies that were partnering on this did a lot of promotion of that, and we got a very nice amount of feedback from people online who were both trail users and non-users to tell us what they thought of the signs that they were able to view in the online survey. And then the other one was strictly with trail users, and that was the online intercept surveys. So staff from WSB were actually out on the trails, and they would see if they could get a walker or biker to stop for a minute and visit with them about the signs. And so these obviously were actual trail users that they were interacting with there. These are another way that we looked at trying to determine the differences between the trail users by looking at what we called the regular users, the infrequent users or new users, and then the non-users. And then again, we tried to further delineate the responses we received by those factors that you see in the bullet points there, such as age and whether they were local residents or a visitor to the area, etc. So this is a photo on the left where we're at the Chaska Farmers Market, and then on the right, one of the WSB staff who had a woman who was out walking her dog on one of your trails and was willing to stop and visit a little bit about the signs. In total then, we heard from 163 people through these 4 engagements. So certainly was not a scientific intervention with the public, but certainly I think 163 diverse opinions that we heard from that I think were important for us to pay attention to. So what did we learn? Of course, we learned a lot about what people think about trails, as you would suspect, in addition to what they thought about the signs, and I'll share some of that as well for you. So these were some of the positive responses we received across all groups. We heard consistently that they preferred mileage on the signs over time, because some sign systems say it's a 20-minute walk to this destination or a 10-minute bike ride, and then no one, absolutely no one, said they wanted time. Said put it in miles, quarter miles, half miles, whatever, but not time, because everyone moves at a different speed. Walkers move at different speeds than other walkers, and bikers move at different speed than walkers, as well as other bikers. We also heard that the signs would provide them with greater confidence to explore trails that they are not familiar with. They would try them out if they knew there were signs there, because it would give them a greater sense of confidence and safety. And this was especially true amongst the women that we spoke with. And as you can see on these sets of slides I'm showing now, we had specific responses that we noted amongst those 3 targeted groups that I mentioned earlier. They also said that they liked having named trails for the route. It provided them with context. Kind of like as we think about our trail systems, as we do our road systems, if we were to tell someone that was seeking a destination near County Road 61 and Highway 41 in Chaska, they would have some context of where that place probably is. And you know it because it's right over here. But if they know Highway 41 runs north and south, and County Road 61 is running east and west, they go, oh, okay, I got an idea now where it is because I know where those 2 are, because those roads are named. And that's what they were telling us with the trails too, that if you can name your trails, that'll help provide context for me to navigate my way around. They also reacted pretty favorably to the experiment we did with the color naming of some of the municipal trails. They kind of like that idea. They did say that we have to be a little bit careful of how we go about doing that. And so if we had, say, somebody from out of town, like really out of town, come to visit here, and they start to navigate their way around the Twin Cities, and they get on the Green Line light rail, and now they come out here to Chaska to bike, and they see this green line, and they get a little confused. So is this bike trail running parallel to the Green Line light rail? It's like, no, that's 30 miles from here. But so we have to be a little bit careful as we use colors to name things. And also heard some feedback that the suggested loops, maybe for recreational rides, might be particularly useful to help someone to have them named as a color. And then as they follow that orange color or the blue color or whatever it is, they know they're on that loop that they intended to be on, and it's going to take them back to their starting point. Some of the more negative responses we heard about our signs was that the signs should be eye-catching. And as you saw, our signs, we designed them in kind of a brown, tan, earth tone type colors, which is very typical for park and recreation signage. But they said on a smaller sign that's going to be on a post or something for a trail, they said it kind of blends in the background. It kind of blends in even when we have a lot of foliage out on the trees and shrubs, but when that is gone, so it definitely blends in their background. And particularly if you're approaching that sign at any significant speed, for example, if you're on a bicycle, they said, you're not even going to see it's there. So they said, make it colorful, make it pop out so it's really visible. Some people might say it doesn't blend in with the natural colors, but again, if they can't see it, it doesn't matter. It's useless to them. They also suggested if we're going to go with a color naming system for some of the trails, that the color of the sign should actually match the trail. So if you're calling something the Orange Loop Trail and you got signs out there, don't give me a brown sign, make the sign orange. Then I really know that I'm still on the Orange Loop Trail. Make it very obvious and easy for the trail user. Excuse me. Obviously, they commented on the font size that we used on the signs. They said, you don't want to have too many destinations on any single sign. You don't want to have the lettering so small that not every user can use it. And of course, if you're traveling at a significant speed on a bike, you want to be able to glance and see. You don't want to have to stop and read because the font is so small that you have to stop if you want to read it. Also, the destinations themselves, they said, you have to be thoughtful about what destinations you put on a sign, of course. That's, like I said earlier, this is kind of an art. And as one of the signs you saw earlier, we put Depot Park on there. And as we were doing our focus groups, we had that sample sign with us, and people said, where's Depot Park? And we have to think a minute and go, oh, yeah, that's in downtown Carver. And our regional trail that we had, that's where the sign was. So it kind of made sense because that regional trail goes into downtown Carver. But if you don't know where Depot Park is, it really isn't helpful. And Marshall has heard me tell the story of a trail that I ride sometimes since it's not far from my home. That's fairly new, and it runs along the Minnesota River between the 35W Bridge and the Cedar Avenue Bridge in Burnsville. And one of the destinations they put on their signage was Casperson Landing, half-mile ahead. And if you've never launched a boat into the Minnesota River at Casperson Landing, you have no idea where Casperson Landing is. And if you're out on this paved trail, why would you possibly know? You're not pulling a boat. And Casperson Landing is right underneath the Cedar Avenue Bridge. So why they didn't say Cedar Avenue Bridge a half-mile ahead, I don't know. But to me, it was an error. Some of the other comments that we received, they suggested, knowing that it gets a little tricky if you want to put, specific businesses on your public government-funded signs. But they did say that it would be useful to have information for people who are not familiar with the trail to say food available, half-mile ahead. And even more importantly, they said it would be great to know public restroom available so far ahead. They said, for people that might be with children or otherwise find a need to have a bathroom, they said it would be nice to know where the next one is, or do I have to go off in the woods here? They said that type of information would be good to have. They also talked about the placement of the signs. Obviously said the most critical places for those are where there are intersections with your trails. They said, once I'm on a trail and it's straight and I can see where I'm going, I'm in good shape. But if there's intersections with another trail, that's where you need to have a sign to tell me, do I turn left, do I turn right, do I go straight? And obviously also if our trails are intersecting with streets or roads and they have to cross one of those, they want to know, do I keep going straight or do I turn left here like all the cars are turning in order to stay on the trail? The other thing that they talked about was having map signs at key locations, particularly the trailheads or again where those intersections are. And we did actually get those installed. It was kind of an afterthought for us, but we eventually got those installed too as part of the pilot project, but that is something that we heard. Again, providing them that context of seeing, for example, the Green Line Trail. Oh, I see on the map here, it starts here and it ends there. Now I have some context of where that trail is and where it goes. And also where the sign is installed, if you could have the little "you are here" notification, they said that would really help it make it more confident for them that they can navigate this trail and get to the destination that they're hoping to get to. And of course, we also heard about some other trail enhancements that I'm sure you've heard about as well in your role here as a park board, things that people would like to have an even better experience. Whoops. So these were just some general feedback that we heard, either positive, negative, or otherwise. In general, though, they were very, very appreciative of the fact that Chaska, Victoria, and Carver County actually took the time to do a pilot test on this rather than to come up with their own trail scheme, sign scheme, and spent a lot of money installing it. And they also really appreciated the fact that we took the time to ask them what they thought of it. So it was good in that regard as well. Overall, they're quite supportive of all the partners moving ahead with additional trail signage for all of the systems. And specifically, 85% of them said that they would use signs to help them to navigate a trail. 89% said that they would support having more trail signs. 67% were more likely to use trails, knowing that there are signs to guide them. And another 2/3 of them said they would feel safer and more comfortable with trail signs. And again, as we took on this endeavor, one of the other key questions that we were trying to answer, because we were hearing different opinions of, do you really need trail signs? Don't people just use their phones? And we found no. There's a lot of people that either don't use their phones or don't want to use their phones or can't use their phones. In fact, we even heard stories about some of the wonderful trails you have here in Chaska that run through some of the ravines, and they said, you can't get cell phone service there. So a cell phone for me to navigate this trail is useless. I really need a sign, and that's what I prefer to have. So that was one of our learnings as well. So WSB, as they took all the information they had, they kind of came up with what a potential prototype would be of a sign if we were to replicate this in the exact same way with the exact same partners. So as you can see there, they put on a limited number of destinations on the sign. The destinations are listed obviously in order of the next closest destination to the farthest destination on the sign. They definitely put in the mileage, and they made them more prominent and easy to read versus the sign that we came up with for our tests project. They again incorporated the predominant color, orange in this case, because this was the Orange Loop Trail, as was suggested by our trail users. And then again, as we looked at having identification on whose trail this is, as you can see in the bottom right, this was just a replication of our previous one if we were to have a partnership designating the trails, but even if it was just a single entity like the city of Chaska, they said definitely have the name on there so we know who to contact if we were to encounter something on the trail that we think the city needs to know about. And they further said, might even just want to put a phone number or an email address on there as well. So it makes it easy for us to contact the trail owner and manager should we encounter something. So in conclusion then, these are some of the key takeaways that if we want to make our trails more welcoming for all types of potential users with different needs and different abilities, signage should definitely be one of the features that we consider adding to our trails. It provides the user with a good experience where they feel confident and safe to navigate their route, and that's what we heard loud and clear from these people. It is not so much an issue for people who are familiar with a trail or a frequent user, but it certainly is for a first-time user or an infrequent user or someone who's just not from the area and not familiar with it. And this is essentially the same thing that they learned in that Hawaii study there, where of course they have a lot of first-time or infrequent users, because obviously it's a high tourist area of people coming to visit and utilize their trails there. We also learned, as I mentioned, that mobile phones and GIS mapping has not become a useful, it has become a useful navigation tool for both trail users and motorists on our roadways, but it hasn't become a replacement. Otherwise, we could go down and take on all the road signs and highway signs, right? Because people are using their phones, but that's not true. They certainly are a useful tool, but they certainly have not replaced the need for signage on roads or trails. And also, as is true with a good road signage system, we have to, of course, be thoughtful in considering how we go about putting together the signs, designing them, placing them, and the language that is used on the signs to really make it a useful thing for people to navigate their way around and utilize the trails. So that is, I guess, a summary of the project that we did. Certainly happy to take any questions you might have, but I forgot to mention a couple of things that I meant to say in my introduction. One is, being a longtime park commissioner myself, I really appreciate the job that you do here, and on behalf of the city and the residents of Chaska, I know that your work is well appreciated. And lastly, I'm really looking forward on Sunday to having my first curling lesson here in Chaska, so looking forward to that as well. So, but with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you.
I have one.
Yes.
Under the negatives, they mentioned the loss of hidden trails, and I didn't know what that meant.
Oh, yeah. So we did have a few people that kind of liked the fact that the trail in their neighborhood was not easy to navigate, because they figured, well, this is my trail then. I'm the only one who knows how to use it. It's my private trail. Now, of course, they were half kidding, but they did mention that a couple of times. You know, they certainly welcome other residents to use it. They were half kidding, but that's what that comment was all about.
How do you see this rolling out, Pat? I mean, time-wise?
Yeah, so we're looking to probably have the two cities and the county get together again. We've also distributed this report to all the other cities in the county. You know, we realize that each of those entities ultimately have to invest to sign their own trails. Nobody's going to do it for them. But if they want to do that in a collaborative way, that makes it easy for people to move from one trail system to another. If there's a role for us to play to help them to facilitate that, that would be great. We'd be happy to do that. On the other hand, we hope the information is useful for them as they go about doing things perhaps independently as well.
That's what I was going to mention, was it would be nice if it wasn't just the three cities eventually, and because then there'd be a consistent look and feel beyond Carver and Victoria going west.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. In fact, after we got the signs up, we actually heard from the city of Carver. They said, what are these signs on the trail in downtown Carver, even though it was a regional trail and not a city trail? So we said, well, you know, we asked you a while back about this, if you wanted to be a part of it, and we never heard from you, but now you're interested, so that's a good thing. You can certainly join us at any time, so.
Just had a couple comments. You're kind of the face of Carver County, because I've seen you at more events than anybody. And it's a friendly face.
Well, thank you.
And it's not the most convenient hours when you're here. But a couple of things that are passionate for me that I heard you mention was the inclusion of the business community and
Yeah.
the potential of Wayfinding to get to their location. So I think that's encouraging. And then foremost, looking at the customer first, because I think sometimes in government we forget who the customer is. It's the taxpayer. And I think it's cool to have 163 people offer their feedback. I was curious as to date and moving forward what the cost is of something like this, of implementing it and then upkeep.
Implementing the signs themselves. Well, again, we were very fortunate that, as you may know, our county operates a sign shop somewhere, as the city does here. And the number of signs that we asked them produce, which I think was right around 90 or so total, was within a budget that the partners, including the public health department, did not have to pay for. So I can't tell you for sure what the dollar value is for those 90 signs. And again, it's typically the design of the sign, the production of the sign, and then if you need a post to put the sign on. In this case, we mostly used existing posts. Obviously, there are some posts that we could not use because it created problems, but we try to use existing sign posts. We also heard in some cases that because we used existing posts, it probably wasn't the best placement, but they understood that we were using existing posts because it was a pilot that we wanted to test. And that's one of the things we learned. But yeah, I think the costs of doing this are not insignificant. As I mentioned, being a Parks Commissioner myself, one of the commissions I sit on is the Scott County Parks Commission. And part of the reason I was so interested in this project is because they're looking to do a signage system over there on their county county trail system. And a lot of the conversation on there was looking at the type of signs at trailheads versus along the trails, and the construction of those, the type of materials you use so they're durable, the placement of them so it doesn't create headaches for maintenance, because even sturdy materials like signs don't last forever. They either have to be repainted or replaced or something along the way. So it doesn't answer your question very well as specific dollar figures, but it's not insignificant by any means. But we all in the roles we play are looking to make it the best experience as possible for the trail users and hopefully increase the number of trail users. So we want to be able to do so in a cost-efficient way, I guess.
So, I mean, are we talking $10,000 or $100,000?
Well, it would depend a lot, I think, on which or how many of your trails you wanted to sign and how many signs were needed, I guess, along those particular routes. I think one of the things we learned, again, as I mentioned earlier, where they thought signs were most important. Again, it wasn't a matter of every quarter mile there should be a sign or every half mile there should be a sign. It's like there should be a sign mostly where there's a decision-making point, where the trail user comes to a point and it's not a straight line, it's not obvious to them. They need to make a decision. That's where they need a sign. So that may only be every mile or so, depending upon the trail segment. So that certainly factors into it. How many signs you need, how many trails you're going to sign. I know that not every trail may be conducive to signing or be necessary to sign, maybe because they're just easy to navigate. So like I said, I don't have any hard figures for you, but I know there's just a lot that has to go into making those decisions.
But this would be a project that you wouldn't add head count, right? I mean, to put signs up along the trails and stuff, we use existing manpower.
Yeah.
It would only be a question of the priorities of how fast you could do it with the people you got, and the expense would be the physical cost of the material you had to put up.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine it being overwhelming.
No, it wouldn't be overwhelming by any means, I don't think, with, again, depending upon how many different trails you plan to sign. And I know in Chaska here, you've got an awful lot of miles of trails.
Yeah, but the other thing too is the things at the trailhead and stuff with the you are here type thing
Yeah.
would be a little bit more costly, but it all seems like it would be fairly manageable within existing funding for the city to be able to do this. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
a big
yeah,
stretch.
You'd have to have a plan for sure. You wouldn't
Right.
probably be able to sign everything you wanted to in one fell swoop, but maybe over time, and then consider which ones are highest priorities. Any other questions I can answer for you about our study here?
Yeah, were there any talks of like merging the two technologies with the signage and then cell phone use? You know, you said a lot of people don't use it when they're out on the trails, but were there any talks of, say, like a QR code
Yeah.
on the sign that you could, you know, tap your phone and, you know, maybe it's as little as it pops up a map, this is where you're at, or, you know, and it could go as far as, you know, this is what you're gonna see on the trail.
Yes.
Those things, I know that all adds up
Yeah.
money-wise, but were there any talks of?
Yeah, there definitely was, and we talked specifically about using QR codes to do some of the very things that you just mentioned. So it wasn't that people were opposed to using their cell phones or a combination of signs and cell phones to navigate, but I guess the point that we learned was that it's not going to replace the need for signs for everyone. But the things you mentioned were definitely discussed and definitely were of interest to members of the public. So, for example, there could be a QR code that people could look at, and it would give them more specific information for where the next public restroom is, if it wasn't obviously marked on the sign itself. Yeah.
And I suppose that would allow us to then make minor updates as well, correct?
Yeah.
Through that QR code, so instead of changing 10 signs, it could always just be a small note, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely correct. I think it does provide you that opportunity to update as you go along, as you mentioned, without necessarily having to completely replace the sign. And particularly if you have new destinations that are built along that trail route that weren't there when you first installed the sign, which is a real possibility in a community like Chaska that's growing, of course.
And then with the, you had mentioned the light rail, but with that light rail and our neighbors to the east, any talks of adding any of that to signage? Is there any commuters going from this to there to take the light rail then further downtown?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. The percent of people that participated in our work, the 163 people, excuse me, the vast majority of them we're using the trails for recreational purposes versus commuting. But I think for those that do commute, again, that is an encouragement, I think, for them to at least use part of that commute via foot or bike before they get to the bus stop or the light rail station or whatever it might be, because we've made it easy for them to navigate that. Yeah. Anything else? All right, well, thank you for having me here tonight. I look forward to doing
Thank you,
more
Pat,
work with
for-
you.
We appreciate the presentation. All right, so that moves us on to item 8B, Mountain Bike Trail Project. Director Grange.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you again, Pat, for coming and sharing that information. It's a lot of exciting stuff. In fact, I got to know Pat back when I worked with the city of Egan, and Pat was with the Dakota County at the time, and so we were both pretty excited when we realized we're together again over here in Carver County. And it'll be fun to continue to partner with him on a lot of projects, because in the end, we're both just passionate about building a healthy community any way we can. So mountain bike trail project, making some progress on that one as well. I believe the last update I had provided you, the city of Chanhassen and the city of Chaska had each received land conveyance agreements from the county. Within those conveyance agreements, there was a defined easement that the county wanted to maintain that essentially was 65 feet from the center line of the roads that were surrounding the trail site. So with that, we thought there could be some potential for some areas that might pose some problems with where we wanted to lay out some of the trails. And so reached back out to the county, and myself, Tim Bosberg, went out and met with Dan McCormick, the traffic engineer with Carver County, along with their county surveyor. We rewalked the site and determined that ideally if we could gain a little bit more of that land, so to speak, that would be ideal. And so the county has agreed to give us 10 additional feet. So they're going to redefine that easement as 55 feet from the center line. So essentially that's where it's at now. They're kind of redoing all the legal descriptions and as it pertains to the agreement. Those will then get forwarded back onto the respective cities. And then from there, we'll provide that update to the city council. And then over in Chanhassen, they'll have to go through their approval process with their city council as well to accept that conveyance. In addition to the three-way memorandum of understanding that we'll be putting in place that essentially ties City of Chanhassen to City of Chaska to the Carver Trails mountain bike group. So at this point, being winter, I think we're, hopefully going to get that accomplished sometime over this winter, and then we'll have everything in place so that when the ground thaws, we can get back out on the land and work with Carver Trails Group to build those trails. So fingers crossed, we'll have a new mountain bike trail system out there sometime next summer. So I'll keep you updated to that progress as I learn more. Next up, we've got the bike-friendly community project. So happy to share that last month we met as a committee for our kind of first official committee meeting to discuss this initiative. Provided a lot of good background information as to kind of why we're doing it and what we anticipate the process to be. And then from there, we broke out into several small groups, and each of those small groups represented one of those defined E categories, if you recall. that the League of American Bicyclists utilizes as part of the application process. So that would be like education, evaluation, engineering. There's 5 of those. So the committee broke up into small groups based on where their passion or expertise is. And they had some good conversation and generated some ideas on some of the things that they think they would like to implement over time that could help position this bicycle-friendly community designation. And so we're going to be meeting again for the second time this coming Wednesday morning at the community center. And actually we'll be inviting Pat to deliver a similar presentation on the wayfinding, just because those committee members, this would be good information for the other committee members on this project to hear. And then we're going to come back together into those small groups, review the ideas that were generated at the last meeting, along with the specific recommendations that Bike MN had put forth in the assessment report that they provided us. And then I think from there start deciding on what are the projects we want to start moving forward on. And so that'll be exciting to see what comes out of that. And then in addition, we've also been working behind the scenes on a SharePoint site that this committee will be able to utilize throughout the duration of this project. Is essentially kind of a centralized one-stop shop, sort of a website where all the information can gather in one place, and there's some collaboration tools within that. So I'm not an expert in that field, so that's stretching me a little bit, but I'm going to lean on some other people to help out with that one. So that's it on the bicycle-friendly community. Just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. I think as we define what those projects will be, that'll be fun to continue to update the park board over time on the progress of those projects. So, any questions on that? No? All right. Last on our list for old business is the Lions Park off-leash dog area. And so just wanted to loop back on that and bring it forward publicly, and that we had met as a park board last month as part of a work session. It was sort of our 1-year kind of anniversary mark of the off-leash dog area. And so it was our intent to have some discussion and feedback on how it was going. And I think overall, you know, speaking for the board, that in the community, it's a very well-received amenity. Over at Lions Park, it's brought forth a lot of great enhancements to that side of the park. You know, and the fact that it included a new bridge over the creek, the shelter building got remodeled and upgraded. Some nice landscaping was put in as part of the project. A new park sign was installed over there. So a lot of good things going on with the park overall, but we also are aware that there's been some concern with, you know, where the small dogs fit in with this and whatnot. And we continue to have some good discussion about that. One thing I think we identified is that, you know, if we could have done it all over again, maybe you open up both areas at the same time. But the fact is, we thought we were doing the community a favor by opening up that front open grassy area first, because it was available, ready to be used. With that, I think people started using that a little bit more regularly and maybe formalizing some habit, all while the back wooded area just was still under construction. You know, we had kind of bumped up against the winter season that year. And then, as you recall, we had a pretty rough spring last season with snow and rain and things like that. So that back wooded area just took a little longer to get up and running. And And then over the summer, we took another measure by putting up a sign at that front open grassy area, just informing people of the wooded off-leash dog area. I think, one of the things that we've recognized is because it's not visible, we were still making that assumption that people knew that it was back there. And by putting up that sign, I think it definitely helped. So looking ahead into the next season, there's a couple of things we plan to do as staff that we think will continue to drive more users to the wooded area. One of them being continuing to clean up some of the sight lines. So between that open grassy area, if you were to be standing there and looking across the creek towards the wooded off-leash dog area, it's still pretty thick woods in there. There's a lot of buckthorn and dead trees, so Public Works would be able to get out there next spring and do some additional clearing. We think that'll do two things. One, it'll create more visibility to that back wooded area, and I think hopefully people realize it's not that far away to go back there and utilize that amenity. The other thing too is I think it creates more wind flow through there, which could maybe help with some of the mosquitoes and just some of the dampness that occurs back in the wooded area. Again, we had a really rainy, wet season this last year, and some of the feedback we had gotten was throughout the summer, it was just pretty heavy with mosquitoes. And so clearing some of that woods, I think, can help. In addition, we will also go ahead and request through the local agencies that provide some mosquito control to see if they would be willing to come out and spray in the back wooded area next season as well. I think that'll help. It doesn't, solve all the problems. The reality is it is a wooded area. But I think those couple of things can continue to provide more enhancement to that wooded area in the back there and drive more people to use it back there. The other thing, though, that was interesting in our work session, I think we're maybe assuming that back wooded area isn't getting used a whole lot, but it was interesting to hear from our Assistant Public Works Director, Scott Selkin, who took upon himself to view a lot of the, we do have some security cameras over there, and he was able to see quite a few people taking their dogs back on the trail to utilize that back wooded area. And I know that Commissioner Wittrock has mentioned that, especially as we kind of got more into the fall season, she's noticed a lot more people utilizing it. So maybe the word's just getting out a little bit more and people are using it more. But we definitely want to be, mindful to the feedback in the community, and we continue to welcome that feedback as we go to try to, make that the best experience we can for as many people as we can. So, anybody else have anything to add?
I know one thing in
that.
our work session that came up is when the city works guy was there,
Yeah.
is the safety across the crosswalk. Was there a follow-up on park board, or was he gonna take that action of a potential of the light, the flashing light? You know what I'm talking about, the crosswalk?
Or-
Communities?
By the community center.
Yes. Not the
Not
dog
the dog
park.
park.
I think he's
Bobbing
just
onto
asking
the-
for follow-up on the dog park issue, yeah.
Yeah, so switching gears
Yep.
on that item, yes, I did bring that forward at a department head meeting that following week, and a couple of things. Our electric department is going to go and take a look to see what they can do immediately to just, enhance the lighting that's on that road. If there's something to do there. And then our Public Works Director mentioned that they're actually doing a pilot study in another area of town in which there's a crosswalk that has a sensor and it's tied into solar. and it provides a little bit of more lighting when somebody's actually crossing the street. So I think taking some time to see how that pilot project goes, to see if that might be something we could implement over at the community center. Yep.
Yeah, just to echo some of your comments, Marshall, regarding the off-leash dog area and the work session that we had. And I thought it was particularly useful that we had Scott there from Public Works because, as we have our ideas on how we might want to address potential issue, or just looking at ways that we might be able to improve the experience, it's good to have somebody like that there because they're kind of where the rubber meets the road. They're the ones that have to actually make it happen. And so going forward, I think to have Scott or someone representing Public Works at those kinds of work sessions is really valuable to the productivity of those meetings. And again, it was good to have us look back at the year and kind of assess where we are. And again, to the general public, want to really encourage them to continue to talk to us and let us know what you're experiencing out there because we're listening and we want to find out, what you're experiencing out there, and if there's ways that we can improve that, we certainly want to do it. All right, any other comments on that? All right, and so that moves us on to item number 9, other business, and 9A, department happenings.
Department happenings. I'll just go ahead and stay right up here.
Yep, don't go anywhere.
So, all right. As always, it's fun to highlight what the staff have done the last month and what we're looking forward to in the upcoming month. And so, pull out a few of the items that was in your packet. So first off, the 2020 winter activity guide is out and about. So go ahead and take a look at that and flip through and make your plans for the winter and spring. Last November 15th on a Friday night, we hosted a free family movie night over at the Community Center Theater. We played Toy Story 4 and had over 230 people. We actually filled the whole theater. I think we might have had to turn a family or two away. So
I know one park board member that unfortunately wasn't able to stay with his wife and 2 kids, and that was me.
Oh, okay.
Broken up about it.
Okay.
It was pretty packed.
Yeah, so that's fabulous, to see that theater getting utilized. So I was excited to hear about that. And then we've already been busy with a lot of holiday events. We had Christmas tree lighting over at Fireman's Park last Sunday, and then Santa's already made one visit to the community center. Came over on a fire truck, actually, so that was pretty cool for the kids to experience that. So keep your eye out. I'm sure Santa will be around a little more yet around town. We hosted our first ever pickleball tournament. Did that the day after Thanksgiving. We had 13 teams participate in that, so that was really cool to see. If you haven't already, check out the lower level of the community center. We completely revamped an exercise equipment area. We had formerly, I think, original equipment from the building there, so it's 30-year-old equipment that we swapped out and created a completely new look and feel there. It's more of a functional fitness area, and Missy and her staff have just done a wonderful job of doing all the research and putting that together, and personal training staff have been down there really helping people out on how to use the stuff and providing different demonstrations. I think they're all getting their workouts this last week too. But just all kinds of positive feedback with that change at the community center. So that's great to see. The weekend of November 16th and 17th was one of our busiest birthday party weekends at the community center. We hosted 18 birthday parties across those couple of days. So that was great to see. And then recently we hosted the 32nd annual Brick City Youth Hockey Tournament over at the community center. That was over Thanksgiving weekend. So 88 youth hockey games were played between the community center and Victoria's community center as well. We're hopping over at the Curling and Event Center this time of year. A lot of corporate outings, doing holiday outings and team meetings. So that's occurring over there. And then last week, Thursday, the Event Center hosted the Celebrate, which was a holiday fest and community conversation that was hosted by the City of Chaska, Eastern Carver County Community Education, and Marnita's Table. Packed the place, heard it was a great discussion, great experience had by all. Everybody got to experience different ethnic foods and whatnot. And so there's going to be a second event of similar type occurring on February 18th. So we'll look forward to that. And then just last week was the big to-do at the community center where we drain the pool, do a lot of maintenance, actually worked with the Public Works Department to help vacuum out all of our sand, filtrate, and put new sand in for the filtration system, and then, you know, got it all balanced and back up and ready again, so that's looking good. And then looking ahead, January 11th, Saturday, will be the Big Chill community event down at Fireman's Park. So stop on out there. It's a free community event. You got DJ ice skating. There'll be kick sledding hosted by Carver County Parks, s'mores, campfires, all that good stuff. And then on Friday, January 24th, we're doing kind of a first ever partnership with the Crooked Pint over at the Event Center, and we're offering a superhero family dance. So it's $15 registration, but a lot of great activities planned for that night, you know, so go ahead and get your Incredibles suit on and head on down to the Event Center. And then January 9th through the 11th, the Curling Center will be part of the Big Spiel. So that is a bond spiel that is kind of a metro-wide bond spiel where there's 4, maybe 5 other curling centers that are part of this bond spiel. And so when you enter your team, you actually go and play at all the different venues. And so our facility is one of those.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk.
There was something else that I read, Marshall, about the Parks and Rec agreement with Carver, City of Carver.
Oh, yeah.
You're doing something with to update or change or?
Yep, so that's been in place for a while. And so we're just at a point where we wanted to revisit with Carver, make sure that, you know, we're providing good value within that agreement. You know, me being new, I hadn't really had a chance to visit with their park commission. So myself and Aaron, our recreation program manager, and then Tessa, who puts on a lot of community events, the 3 of us went and joined their park commission. It's a good opportunity to gather feedback from them and get some ideas on what are the types of programming, things that they would like to see in their community for us to have a little sense of direction to fulfill that
So that's
partnership and
working
agreement.
well?
What's that?
It's working well at this point?
Oh, yeah, yep, working really good. So look forward to continuing that partnership.
All right, any other questions for Marshall? All right, thank you,
All right.
Director Grange.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to item 9B, which is our Park Board Roundtable. And Commissioner Wayfinding, would you like to share what you might have on your mind for the roundtable?
Sure. I think this city has really come alive this past month with all the activities for the holiday season. The Fireman's Park holiday, tree lighting was fabulous. Marnita's Table, the food was amazing, so I'm really glad that they're gonna have another one in February. There was great conversation to be had, and, yeah, if you haven't gone out and seen the city lights, check them out. It's really pretty downtown with all the lights.
Yeah, very much. Commissioner Ives.
Yeah, I'm bummed I missed that Marnitas, or Marnitas?
Marnitas table.
Marnitas? Yeah, I'm bummed I missed that, but maybe I'll hit it in February. Yeah, but the Toy Story event was really cool. Like, I mean, it was busting at the seams. They had to bring in a bunch of extra chairs. And it was so cute because the Girl Scouts were doing fundraising and they sell like candy for $1. So you have to get like half a dozen of them. You're just forced to. Just kind of so that small town feel to it a little bit. But obviously, I mean, I'm gonna recognize these two, Shawn and Pat, for 9 years is a long time to volunteer at something. And so, you know, just for me personally, thank you for taking the time, and the consistency I think is important and good for a volunteer board like this. So I appreciate it.
All right. Commissioner Olsen, no blubbering.
I'll try not to. I also missed the Marnitas table, but the feedback I've heard from that event was off the charts positive. So thanks to the city and city staff for helping to lead on that effort. I think that's really great. I did have one question for you, Marshall. A couple months back, I asked about some possible changes to the fitness center policy for youth. Is that going forward, or?
Yeah, it's still in the works. One thing that we need to do is we just got to get some of our new staffing model in place, just because we feel that if we're going to expand on the kind of userships, so to speak, we just want to make sure we got more staff presence in the building. But I anticipate that to take place in the near future.
Okay, good.
Yep.
And then I guess with this being my last meeting, just a couple quick words. Just, it's 9 years, it's gone by really fast. So thanks to all the commissioners I've served with, past and present. It's been a really great learning experience, learning from everybody. Everybody's got different interests and different experiences, and it's been really awesome to get to know all of you over the years. So thanks to Dave for being the chair the last few years, and to John and Nate for handling it earlier in my 9 years. Thanks to Marshall and Mary for your leadership, and Tom and Kathy before that, the city council, and everybody for giving me the chance in the first place. All the Parks and Rec staff, we have great facilities, but it's the programming and the hard work and dedication that they bring to that really makes everything come alive and gets the community involved. Public Works for doing a great job taking care of our parks. If you go out to a playground, there's never anything that's broken or unsafe, which is not what you'll see in other cities. So I appreciate that they do that. So, and just a note to anyone who's, if there are folks watching this and you're unsure about whether or not you want to be on the park board or another commission, my advice to you is do it. You will not regret it. And even if you don't choose to serve on a commission, please be involved. Every time we've had a major project and we've gotten the public involved, their feedback has made that project better. Whether it's been Fireman's Park or Dog Park or any of the other things we've done. So I really appreciate it when we have people who do come here and give us their opinions and give us feedback. So with that, just thanks everyone, and I know you continue to do a great job for the city of Chaska.
All right, thanks, Shawn. Commissioner Branch.
Let's take the opportunity to thank Shawn and Pat for your dedication to the city. It's quite admirable. And I appreciate both of you for what you've done for the city of Chaska. Thank you.
Commissioner Downs.
I'll second that. I really enjoyed working with both of you, both very pleasant, both very aware of what's going on around. It helps out a lot on the board. Thanks. That's all I got.
Commissioner Wittrock.
Well, I'm kind of annoyed because everything I was going to say, Shawn said. So, I just echo his sentiments. He did a very thorough job, and I was thinking today about how I never would have really gotten to know any of you without the park board. The one exception is Elizabeth. I was her dean at Chaska High School, but she was so perfect, I hardly ever saw her, and she's still perfect. But the three projects that stand out the most in my mind, and we've done a lot of different things, were, of course, Fireman's Park, and Matt described that once as the diamond of the Chaska Park system, and I think that's really true. And then I was fortunate enough to be the park board representative to Veterans Park, and I thought that project turned out just wonderfully. And being on that task force, I got to meet some new people again and several veterans, which was really inspiring to hear about their service. And the thing I like about Fireman's Park and Veterans Park is they flow together so nicely. It's just kind of a seamless park system. And then, of course, the dog park was a big one, and I've got kind of a funny story to tell about that. When we first had the work session where this site was proposed, no one said who had come up with the idea. So I jumped to the conclusion that it was Matt Podorodsky, and I don't know where I got that idea, but I thought Matt had come up with the idea. And I went to several people and said, boy, isn't that Matt smart? He came up with this idea, and yada, yada, yada. And then I happened to be meeting with Marshall on a different matter, and I didn't even get to the other matter. I started in, boy, that Matt is really great. He came up with this site. And Marshall merely said, Pat, sometimes it takes fresh eyes. So I had to go around and tell a number of people that that Matt was very smart, but this was Marshall's idea. So I'm very grateful for your leadership, Marshall, and Mary. Mary's been a real help to me over the years, and I've enjoyed this experience immensely. And like Shawn, I've encouraged other people to be on the board, and I'm trying to get an AOA to apply, but I don't know if I've had any luck with that.
Yeah,
So thank you.
Commissioner Uterman.
Cool. So I had the chance to go to a 95th birthday party at the lodge, and Adriana, or Jordiana Arlt, if you're watching, which she normally is, or she's fallen asleep by now, she'll watch it again. Her and her 8 kids were there, and a number of those kids, they all grew up here in Chaska, but a few of them hadn't been to the lodge in a while. And so they had the experience of being there, and there was probably close to 100 people that were there that had a chance to experience the facilities, which I thought was a cool way to showcase the lodge space, so I'll call out to her. Zach Johnson, our 4-year-old, just got done with basketball. Krista coached them, and so he did a fantastic job of coordinating the basketball league and the chaos that goes with it, so that was fantastic to see your staff at work, not necessarily knowing they were being observed or not, but it was pretty cool and fun, and I'd say we were undefeated. I don't know for sure, but unofficially we were undefeated. I'd echo the 100 Club, the Marnitas Table, the Community Center Chaska, or Community Center Santa that we got a chance to see, and the Chaska Hawks football team, which is the pride of our city right now. But also a call out to John Lenzen and his family for paying for the Christmas tree that we all get to enjoy. Sometimes it's lost as to who writes those checks, but man, every time we get to showcase the city this time of year, we get to drive down and see the tree, and we take a special detour. We take Brooklyn to school so that we can see that, and just brightens the day. So call out to that. The other thing I'd like to say is this is a perfect time of year for Christmas stocking stuffers to get a community center membership. I think it's very well used, and we don't always need stuff, and maybe there's an opportunity for you to take your kids or your grandkids to do classes that are there. It's very affordable, and it's fantastic. And then the last thing I'd like to echo is what everybody said about Shawn and Pat. I don't know if it's out of quorum or not, but I'd encourage you guys to be the first and second to adjourn the final meeting while you're here. I think that would be a fantastic thing, and I hope you guys show up in different ways. I know you can't be on park board at least for the next term, but I hope you guys show up in different places, whether it's school board or whether it's other commissions, because what you guys know about this community needs to be passed on to people that are maybe taking the torch for the next generation of this board. But that knowledge needs to be shared. Not just stored, but shared. And I appreciate the 9 years that you guys have done there. And if you calculate it by three hours, that's 320 some hours, and that's close to a third of a year of work service. So that is a lot of hours, and it's a lot of sacrifice away from home and kids' activities, and making a commitment to be here. So I'd echo that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I just, lastly, Pat and Shawn, it's been a real pleasure serving with both of you. I have nothing but respect and admiration for the talents and the perspectives that each of you brought and the great contributions you made to helping us, arrive at the best possible decisions we could, or I should say, recommendations we could make. And, it's going to be, you guys will be hard to replace. And, but again, it's been a real pleasure serving with both of you. So with that, I don't know who wants to make the motion first to adjourn.
Shawn, I'll let you.
Okay, I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay,
I
Commissioner
second.
Olsen, and second by
Second it.
Commissioner Wittrock. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.